front pushed up from the Gulf this week, and it's really warm out here. Of course, I got the fleece on, but it's almost ready to take it off, man. But a lot of times in the winter, a warm front will come up from the Gulf, bringing a lot of moisture, bringing a lot of rain, gentle rain. But then you'll have a cold front that comes, so the warm front will come up from the Gulf, and then a cold front will come wash down behind it like that, and just sort of, and it'll usually the warm front will kind of split the cold in half, and the cold fronts will kind of fill in around it, or one or another will stall out or whatever. So last year the polar vortex was weak, so we had a very warm, very mild winter. If the polar vortex is strong this time, we'll have another, like a true proper winter. Jugs are upstream, and the wind is still blowing against the current, so we came back downstream. We're drifting with a handline for some bluegill on some of these cut chicken livers, beef livers rather. Had one bite, that's about it right now. This time of year, the bluegill bite just almost becomes, well, in the late afternoon, they can bite fairly well. Have it draped across my leg. Yep, we just had a hit there. I'm running my dropper loop. A lot of fly fishermen like to use dropper rigs. Just look up dropper rigs and fly fishing. I can feel the fish biting against my leg, so I can leave my hands free if I want. Came out yesterday, only caught one channel catfish. Full moon will be here Saturday. Today's Friday, so it'll be I guess they call this the beaver moon or whatever. Fishermen down there are fishing the old dam. There's almost always some shad and skipjack breaking on the surface, but I don't have a trolling motor to hold in the current and then to really navigate it the way they can. You always have to design what works for you. It's not about looking at YouTube or what this person does and doing what they do just because they do it. Successful people you see fishing on YouTube have probably been fishing for decades and have refined their methods for decades. They just bought a camera and just started shooting it, copy what they do and have the same success just like that. No, you got to go through the same process. And that's the thing that what my channel is. If you go back even a couple years ago, I was fishing completely differently, because that's the point, is to document that process. Because you can learn from people, you can learn to avoid the mistakes they did, and you can implement the things they did, but I'm still probably fishing a different class of riverine lakes, or lakes that retain most of their river-like qualities. Unbelievable. Cell phones. I mean, the whole point is to get away from all that, and yet stinking people can hear somebody's cell phone way down there. I do hope to, with the new boat, to try to get another trolling motor. Anyway, if any of you want to contribute to that, it's still up, and I've got some new hooks on order. I have a couple of contributors that I thank for that. I know Panfish is one of them. The other fellow I can't remember the name, but I'll get you on the next video. But Panfish, you check out Panfish's his YouTube channel. He's always kind of funny, hokey. Not really hokey, but he's kind of a funny guy who, typical of a type of person who probably doesn't have a whole lot of time to fish, but loves fishing and wants to fish and wants to try to do the best he can to get out here and fish, because not everybody's able to do what I'm doing. I'm just doing this. I'm doing this to feed myself, you know. But still, there was a time where I didn't have much time. One thing I always did was look at the solar calendar and only fished according to the solar calendar. As far as the boat, we'll probably buy some graph paper and start doing some things and probably build a model or two first, you know. I contend that the full moon, you're better off fishing at night, and the new moon, you're better off fishing during the day. I'm kind of scared to get out here on the boat by myself at night. You see how thick my glasses are, right? I don't have all the best visions. Another thing I want to experiment with the new boat is planer boards. Guys ever done planer boards? I'm not talking about the cheap ones you put on your rod and reel. I'm talking about the big boards that they're using for striper and walleye, where you'll have a board 75 feet out that way and have 3 or 4 lines out that way coming off the main line on the board, and 3 or 4 lines out that way, and you just got a swath, you know. And with a wooden boat, I could put a wooden mast up, especially coming through the winter or whatever, or where I'm seeing a lot of shad breaking on the surface. You get about 3 or 4 lines out 75 feet away from the boat, you know, maybe 25, 50, 75 feet away from the boat like that. You ought to, especially with the flies that I tie and stuff, you ought to be able to get some stripers, man. And this time of the year, it gets harder to find the bluegill, because a lot of those bluegill are more tightly congregated and they're not as scattered. When they're kind of scattered, I can rack them up on the Handline because I can cover more water than anybody. But once they're kind of, they're in these little small shoals or schools, you almost are better off with a trolling motor, a depth sounder, and just get a jig, like a crappie jig or something. The design criteria are such that's like this. I mean, I guess it's gonna be a talking head video. Most John boats, the bottom of this boat is 36 inches wide, and the top is something like 5 feet wide, so there's a lot of flare. That's great to splash water out to the sides, but it's horrible for paddling that you see me do sometimes, which I probably should get on the paddle and get a little bit more speed now. I have either two options. Either I can take the top and shrink it down, or take the bottom and push it out. If you shrink the top down and make the whole thing 36 inches wide, I wouldn't be able to run more than about 10 horsepower off this motor, just based on Coast Guard regulations, those sorts of things. One of the great things about flaring it out means you had to bend the sides, which means now the boat has some secondary stability. Initial stability is the boat's ability to resist, moving initially at first. Now, kayaks and canoes, as they tilt further and further over, they actually get more and more stable because it resists tilt flipping over more and more. Well, you get that with just had a nice hit. Whoa, nice hit. So the secondary stability is what it resists it finally flipping over. If you bring those sides in, you lost all secondary stability essentially with this boat. And so that's why the Coast Guard is so strict about flat bottom, hard chine boats and how much horsepower. What you can do, if you make it 48 inches wide, now you have a nice wide format that has enough initial stability that it doesn't essentially matter what the secondary stability is. Of course, don't be stupid, right? Like if you go to Australia, they call them punts. We call them John boats over here, but the John boats over there, they all have straight flat sides to them. Back on the Handline below the dam here. We caught one, a couple of channels. Been slow today, very slow. Trying to fish this sort of big back eddy. See if we can't hook into something right in here.